Congressman Adam Smith joins us now. Congressman, so what's the Democrats' plan now that President Trump has taken military action against Iran without congressional approval?
Well, up front is to force a vote, and I think that's the minimum that we should expect. If there are members who support this decision to go to war, yeah, that's okay. It's a representative democracy, but they ought to be on record doing that. I mean, this is the largest military operation our country has ever launched without really any justification for it from the president to the American people or to Congress or without any congressional vote. So I think we ought to have a vote. So we're going to try and force that vote. Obviously, we have concerns about the operation itself, but the constitutionality of what the president has done and the way he has done it is in a very authoritarian, autocratic manner. He didn't even, I mean, he gave his State of the Union speech 4 days ago. He talked about Iran for 3 minutes, didn't mention this at all. He hasn't even made the case to the American people. And I think this is in keeping with President Trump's view of his power, that he can do what he wants when he wants, and he doesn't have to follow the law or explain himself to anybody. So I think Congress should stand up and say, no, we should have a say. And again, if you support it, great. But at a minimum, the elected representatives of this country ought to be on record.
Congressman, but what are the consequences if, in fact, Congress does not give authorization for this military action? I asked the same question to the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Take a listen to what he said. So to clarify, if the president goes ahead and strikes Iran without congressional authorization, would that be an impeachable offense? You said it's unconstitutional.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
We've crossed the bridge. What are the consequences? Is this an impeachable offense if, presumably, if Democrats take back the House?
Let me get to the impeachment thing in a moment. But up front, I mean, the sad fact of it is, even if we were to pass the resolution saying that the president can no longer do military action without congressional authorization, you know, that's a piece of legislation which the president could then veto, and we'd have to have a 2/3 vote to overcome that. So it's quite possible that if the president decides to go forward with this, even if we pass this, he could. Legislatively, our main option is to try to cut off the appropriations, but that too is problematic because the resolution on the war powers is privileged, which means we can force the vote. Appropriations votes require the Republican majority to agree to allow that vote, which they're unlikely to do. But look, regardless of whether or not there's any consequences, elected members of Congress ought to be on record in terms of how they feel about this. We are elected to represent the people. This shouldn't simply happen and we shrug it off and don't pay any attention to it. Look, the enthusiasm for impeachment always worries me. Because also you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate for that to have any effect. But I think we need to force a debate forward and to force a vote on this. You know, even if it doesn't fix the problem like that, you know, we shouldn't let the president simply plow forward without the Congress even having any say in what is done.
Congressman, you know, it seems that one of the problems that we keep finding ourselves in is that we still have this AUMF from 2001 that's still in place. It has been used by President Obama. It has been used by President Bush, obviously. President Trump has used it as well, and so did President Joe Biden. Should Democrats going into this midterm election campaign on a promise to revoke the 2001 AUMF that is being used as a catch-all by every president to go into any war, any part of the world, under the guise of, like, we're just fighting terrorism as a result of 9/11?
Yes. We should have repealed the 2001 AUMF a long time ago. I've long supported that. That was 25 years ago in an entirely different context. We should absolutely repeal it. Now, you might want to make an argument, should we replace it with something? The level of the threat from terrorism, we can have that debate. We can have that argument. It's difficult to pass an AUMF, but absolutely we should repeal the 2001 AUMF. Again, 25 years ago, right after 9/11. It is not applicable to the situation we face today, and there's very few of us still in Congress who were there in 2001. We should absolutely have another look at that. We should repeal the 2001 AUMF, no question.
Congressman, you're ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. You have not received a formal briefing to date. Am I correct? And when do you expect to receive that briefing, and what are your questions for the Trump administration?
This is an incredibly important point that people are skipping past in a lot of places. And yes, the actual military operation, its effects, its likelihood of success, what is success, what are we trying to accomplish, what is going to be the cost of accomplishing it, all of that is incredibly important. But it's also important, as I alluded to earlier, that the president, President Trump in this case, is exercising a level of executive authority that we haven't seen before. He is completely ignoring any check or balance. And this is what he said. He said his power is only constrained by his own morality, which is what an authoritarian would say, not someone who was elected as president of a constitutional republic. And so the fact that they have completely ignored Congress, they ignored the American people for the most part, is incredibly problematic. And specifically, no, at this point, the Department of Defense that is engaged in a war has not briefed or even spoken to any member of Congress. Marco Rubio has spoken, as I understand it, to some of the Gang of Eight, which is intel and leadership, but even then not provided a brief. And the Department of Defense that is fully engaged in this conflict has not spoken to me. They haven't spoken to Mike Rogers, who's the chairman of the committee. They haven't spoken to Roger Wicker, who's the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, or anybody. And this is a level of authoritarian power that I think undermines our representative democracy. They should tell us what's going on so we can exercise the oversight that the Constitution says that we are supposed to do.
Congressman, what are your top concerns for American troops at the moment, if you have any?
Yeah, no, huge risk. We've got between 40 and 50,000 troops in the region. And I don't know, Iran, everyone talks tough during a war. Who knows what Iran has left in terms of their ability to fire missiles and drones and attack our troops in the region. But we don't know. And we know, again, that we have 40 to 50,000 troops in the region at various bases in, more than a half dozen countries. And if Iran attacks them, they are unquestionably at risk. There's a finite number of munitions on both sides, obviously, but who runs out first? I mean, do we run out of adequate air defense missiles before Iran runs out of their missiles to attack, or the other way around? So yeah, troops are at risk. Iran, understandably, views this as an existential threat. So they're going to fight back with everything they had and have and try to inflict casualties as much as possible, much more so than the previous fights, which were not existential threats to their regime. So yeah, American troops are absolutely at risk throughout the region.
All right, Congressman Adam Smith, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Congressman.
Thanks for the chance.